Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Gari and we're live from Boston. We're finally rid of the rain here, the sun's peeking out, so we're excited to get started on this enterprise masterclass on advertising profitably on Vendor Central. This is the first for us. We haven't really done a 1P or Vendor Central webinar before. Most of ours have been focused on 3P. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're excited that you're excited to learn more about this. So I'm joined in the room today. So, my name is Gari Iyengar. I'm the Manager of Product Education. If you've ever been in our Help Center, you've probably seen my face floating around there. But I'm excited to be joined by Alex Kessler, who is our resident expert on all things 1P.
Hey everybody, my name is Alex. I lead our product research and development team here at Takeometrics. And yeah, as Gari said, I work quite closely with quite a few vendors. Some pretty big guys on Vendor Central and AMS. So I'm excited to be here as well. And
yeah, and I'm excited to see the questions coming in. Alex and I are gonna try to get through all of them. So some of them our colleague Janine will be answering for you live. Some of them will answer on air. And then if we don't get to it during the webinar, we definitely have time for a Q&A at the very end. But we'd also like to know where you're dialing in from today. So if you haven't yet, get into that question box and let us know where you're dialing in from.
Yeah, it is nice and sunny here in Boston today.
Yeah.
Just had lunch before this. It was gorgeous outside. It's been so rainy and disgusting.
It's been a little bit disgusting. We feel from all over the place. You see Idaho in there, Utah, Colorado,
Seattle. Ooh, where Amazon's located.
Very nice.
New York, nice and sunny there too. Love it.
Great. Oh, the Ozarks. I don't know, Katie, if you've watched that show on Netflix. That's also set in the Ozarks. You should check it out.
With Jason Bateman.
With Jason Bateman. That's
love
right.
him.
Yep.
Awesome.
Perfect. So throughout the course of the webinar, guys, don't wait until the end to ask your questions. Anytime you think of something, whether it's 1P specific or it's about getting set up there, about running campaigns, let us know. We'll make sure to address those for you. But let's get right into our first poll. This is going to give Alex and I an idea for where different people are in their pursuit of 1P. So I'm going to launch this poll right now. I'd love to hear from you. Are you currently selling as a first-party vendor? So this webinar is focused on that. If you aren't selling yet, we still encourage you to stick around so you know what to expect if you do have the opportunity to go down that route later. So the poll's been launched. Let us know if you sell 1P, if you do 1P and 3P, you only do 3P, and if you're unsure.
I know, I'm interested to know how many people joining us use 1P and 3P. Most people I work with are just 1P or just 3P, so.
Yeah. I would expect there to be more of a mix, but it seems like it's usually one or the other.
I know. And just to clarify, 1P means first party. So that means you're wholesaling your item directly to Amazon and you use the Vendor Central interface to manage your inventory, and then you advertise your products using AMS.
Yeah, so the way,
marketing services.
Exactly. So a customer shopping on Amazon would see that it's fulfilled by Amazon rather than by you.
Right.
Versus a 3P is one where you would directly just send your shipments to FBA potentially and do it from there.
Yeah, and what's really good is that a lot of the strategies that you use on Vendor Central can also be applied to Seller Central and vice versa.
Yeah, so we'll definitely spend time. I think Jennifer has a question about that. We'll definitely spend time exploring the differences and how you could apply strategies from one to the other.
Right. Should we close the poll? Is everyone answered?
Yeah, looks like most people have submitted their answer. Let's close that out. Sharing the results here, it looks like most people only use Seller Central. And then the second group is actually a mix of 1P and Seller Central as well. So I think no matter where you fall in the spectrum, you're going to get a lot of benefit from today. A lot of these strategies are ones you could implement, whether it's 1P or 3P.
Right.
Perfect. Great. So that takes us right into our purpose. So as we said, it's about advertising profitably as an Amazon vendor on Amazon Marketing Services. We'll tell you what the difference is between vendor, AMS, 3P, 1P, all of that coming up shortly here. But this is really to help you be profitable there. So we'll go through some basics of campaign structure, creation, and then overview of advertising as a vendor, give you some specific strategies that you could try out, and then we'll have some little links for you to check out, and then we'll go into takeaways and Q&A. But like I said, don't wait till the end. Send your questions in any time. We'll keep monitoring them. So Alex, resident expert, let's go right in.
Yeah, so I think it's good to just start with an overview of advertising on Vendor Central, which is a bit misleading as a topic. But the reason I say that is because there's 3 ad types, and the interface for Vendor Central advertising is called AMS. So those 3 ad types are sponsored products, headline search ads, and product display ads. So sponsored products are the typical keyword-driven ads that are for the bottom of the funnel. You really want to target customers within the search results, whereas headline search ads, in comparison, have a little bit of a different goal. We like to call it the sparkle placement, as it's that above the crease, or what is it, above the fold?
Yeah. So you don't have to scroll down your page to see it.
What I call it, the crease above the fold.
Synonymous.
Right? And it's definitely the best way to drive brand awareness. Again, it's keyword targeted, but it's definitely more creative. You get a headline with 50 characters, and you get to advertise 3 products or more in those. So it's definitely, like I said, the sparkle placement. And then product display ads are really interesting. Again, this is actually on the product detail page on the right-hand side. And it can be interest-based targeting, where you can target specific categories, and then it's also ASIN-based targeting. So there's 2 options, interest and then ASIN-based. And ASIN-based means you just show up on a specific product in question. So let's see. I mean, and that is probably one of the biggest differences between, actually, time out. This is just an example of what these look like for y'all. So obviously headline ads right at the top.
Yep.
Sponsored ads is typically beneath that, but sponsored ads can also show up on a product detail page in that quote unquote sponsored ads related to this item section. And then product display ads, like I said, if we want to switch the slide, Gary, to product display, is right there. Yep, right there. So perfect way to just target one of your competitors if you're looking for an aggressive strategy.
Great. And then we have, before I continue on, a question about whether we'll be sharing a recording from Drew. And yes, we will be. We'll send out a recording in a couple of days. And then I think one of us speaking a little softly, I'm not sure which one of us it is, Alex, but we'll both try to speak up, try to make this as clear as possible. Perfect. So now that we have an idea for what kind of ads there are and where you could expect to see them if you were to run them, let's go into the difference between 1P and 3P. Seems like most of you are more familiar with 3P, Seller Central, so we'll give you an idea for how that compares against Vendor Central.
Right. So the biggest difference between being a seller and being a vendor is the interfaces, I would say. So as a seller, you honestly have it's better, I guess is the easiest way to say it, because you're able to manage your advertisements and your inventory and your sales data all in one place, right? It's called Seller Central. Whereas as a 1P vendor, it's a little bit split up. So your advertisements are in a totally separate interface from your inventory and your sales. So Vendor Central houses all of your sales data and your inventory, and then you have to, separately log in to AMS to manage your ads. So honestly, as a vendor, it's quite difficult to tell how your ads are impacting your total business, or your shipped COGS, or your shipped units by COGS. Not that it's super easy as a seller, but at least everything's all in one place for you to play around with.
Yeah, and it's not called AMS. I think that's a little typo we have on the screen up there. It's actually just Seller Central.
Yes, Seller Central as a seller.
Yep, so it has a more cohesive interface where everything lives together. And then right now they both offer similar reporting as well, right? You can get bulk operations reporting, advertising reports, and that's relatively new for Vendor Central. It hasn't historically had bulk ops files.
Yeah, I mean, Vendor Central or AMS AMS specifically went through an entire front-end user interface update. So now you can export bulk operations. There's a bunch more advertising reports for headline ads like Seller Central has now. They added additional graphs and charts. And I mean, Seller Central also went
Yeah, they both had a bit of a facelift.
Yeah, I mean, it still is a bit buggy, honestly, from my experience with using the new interfaces on both. Like, there are some bugs and the user experience on our end if you're managing a seller or a vendor, and those interfaces is a bit hard. But there's definitely like a lot more exportable information that's really useful.
Yeah, I remember 2 years ago, I want to say, I managed AMS campaigns for a couple of our sellers here, and I would have to manually go through page by page and change each bid.
Yeah.
Can't say that I missed that at all. I'm glad they finally decided to update to bulk changes.
I know, no, it was a disaster beforehand. And then probably the second biggest difference is, of course, like as a seller, you can currently run sponsored ads and headline ads. As a vendor in AMS, you have that additional opportunity to run product display ads. But it's interesting because really, like, that's one of the only major differences. I mean, Amazon has done a pretty extensive job transitioning a lot of the historically vendor-focused features over to Seller Central. Yep. So, for instance, like, I remember a big benefit of being a vendor was the ability to run A+ content.
Yep.
Now they've moved that over to Seller Central as enhanced brand content. So there's no, pros to having that.
Yeah, and it's probably been, I would say, a year since HSA for Seller Central was released.
Right.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, exactly. And then now as a seller, you can also run headline ads. That used to be exclusively on Vendor Central. I will say about that, though, as a seller, if you want to run headline ads, you can only do so on items that are brand registered.
Right.
If you don't have brand registry, you cannot run headline ads. As a vendor, you're able to run headline ads on any items.
Yep.
Which is where I see, like, if I do have someone that runs vendor and seller, they are able to capitalize on the headline ads for items that are not brand registered for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a definite pro of running 1P and 3P.
Yep. And then the last difference is in Vendor Central, there isn't really a concept of SKUs, right? It's just kind of on an ASIN basis versus on Seller Central. When you're setting up ads, you provide Amazon the SKU to create those ads.
Right.
Great. And I see another question about recording. Don't worry, we will be sharing a recording, Katie, of this webinar in a couple of days here, but we encourage you to stay through it live so you can answer all your questions. Perfect. So that brings us right into our next poll question. And we just went through a few of the ad types on AMS, and we want to know which ones of these you've tried. I know not everyone in the audience is running ads on AMS yet or using Vendor Central, but if you are, let us know which type, and then if you're not, let us know that as well. So we have sponsored product ads, headline search ads, product display ads. You can run a combination of any of them, or you could not run any of these ads. So let us know where you fall on that.
Good question by Nathan. Says, what are you seeing or hearing from Amazon about unifying Vendor and Seller Central? Interesting.
That's the hot gossip, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of hot gossip, right? Like, it seems like they're doing a lot to make Seller Central exactly the same as Vendor Central. So honestly, I haven't really heard anything about that, but it does seem like they are making Seller Central the same thing as Vendor Central. So we'll keep our ear to the ground for you and see if we can find anything out about that. But very, very interesting question.
Yep. And then Dennis has a question about 1P and 3P. Are these our terms or are they used industry-wide? So Dennis, these are terms that Amazon uses as well, and it's used across Amazon's industry. So 1P stands for first party, where you sell to Amazon and Amazon sells it to the consumer. And then there's 3P, which is third party, where you directly list your product and sell to the consumer.
Right. Yep.
But if there's any other terminology we can clarify for you, I know we sometimes get a little bit jargony and start using abbreviations. So definitely let us know, and we'll try to make it as clear as possible.
Right. That's what happens when you're so deep into this.
I know. We live and breathe this. Is what we do all day long. So let us know if there's anything we can clarify.
And another good question is, can you run sponsored ads if you are not brand registered under 3P? And the answer is yes. You can run sponsored ads on your items regardless of whether or not you have brand registry.
So the only restriction for brand registry is headline search ads, but you can run sponsored ads.
Yes.
All right, so I just have the results of our poll up. It looks like most people are doing a combination of all or some of the above. And then the next biggest chunk is sponsored product ads. So not nearly as many people running HSA or running product display ads. So sponsored product ads by far are taking the lion's share here.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Because, I mean, if I were to choose a single ad type to run, regardless of like Seller Central or Vendor Central, I would choose sponsored ads, but it makes me happy that most people are running all or some of the above rather than focusing on just one.
Yep.
So it makes sense.
Perfect. So let me hide those results. See a couple more questions coming in. If you don't get to it right now, don't worry. We've taken note, and we'll be addressing a lot of this coming up in the webinar here. So we'll make sure to answer your questions when we come to those topics. So today we're going to share some strategies with you, specifically 5 strategies, no more, no less, and then we'll try to answer all of your other questions as well. So we're going to start with campaign structure. We really stress campaign structure here, whether it's for 1P Vendor Central, whether it's for 3P Seller Central, because without a good campaign structure, that's kind of the foundation of all of your advertising. So that needs to be done right. And then you can go into strategies around bidding, around budget, around negative keywords, around refining match types. And then we'll spend some time showing you how you can use this data, your sponsored ads data, to help your headline ads and your product display ads as well. So it seems like most of you maybe aren't as comfortable with those 2 forms of advertising. So we'll show you how you can get started using your sponsored products data. All right, so audience-based campaign structure. So we'll explain to you what this looks like, and we'll show you an example of the campaign structure as well. But sort of an overview of it is you want to set up your products, set up your campaigns with similar products and similar product lines. So this is the same whether you're doing 1P or 3P. You want to set it up this way based on products and product lines with similar margins and the same objectives.
Right. I think that's probably at the highest level, like a really important takeaway. Your campaign should never just be a jumble of all of your products into one big campaign. You really want to make sure you break everything down by similarities, not only in product line, but also in goal or objectives. So say like you're launching a new product, you definitely don't want to put that in a campaign with older, more mature products where your goal would be profitability. So definitely, like I would say the similarities between the products is part 1. And then the second is make sure that all of those similar products have similar margins and objectives as part 2 to that. Gary, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. In no scenario would you want to put anything together. Like margin is going to be your differentiating factor. You don't want to tackle 2 things with different margins the same way.
Right, exactly.
And then you want to start using your customer search trends and then set up campaigns based on how shoppers are searching for your products. So we'll illustrate on this a little bit more. This is where I think Vendor Central, or I keep saying Vendor Central, I mean AMS, campaigns vary from SP, is intent and how customers are shopping. And then you want to have a 3-to-1 mirrored structure. So it's not quite a 1-to-1 like you do for 3P where you have 1 automatic and 1 manual. For AMS campaigns, you want to have 1 automatic and then 3 corresponding manual campaigns that go with that 1 automatic.
And honestly, I would even say, like, if you're an advanced, like this is a pretty advanced webinar, you could definitely utilize this in Seller Central strategy as well.
And I've seen a lot more Seller Central campaigns coming through that are based on targeting competitors, targeting brand names, and we'll be going into that in here as well.
Right. And I also would just note, like, we have this take a tip at the bottom. A big difference between AMS and Seller Central is that you're only able, in AMS specifically, you can only have 1 campaign and 1 ad group in that campaign. Seller Central allows you to have a campaign with multiple ad groups. So in Vendor Central or in AMS as a vendor, if you're advertising, your campaign should definitely be more broken down. So you should have less products in each campaign than a comparable Seller Central campaign. And Gary, maybe we can illustrate this with an example.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to use examples of shoe sellers because they have some pretty complex campaigns. But if you were setting up a campaign for, say, boots in Seller Central, what you would do is have your boots campaign, and then your ad groups would be black boots, brown boots, gray boots. If you were to do the same thing in AMS, What you'd actually want are 3 separate campaigns, one for black boots, one for brown boots, and one for gray boots.
Right. That's the perfect example. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, and typically what we notice in Vendor Central or AMS and even in Seller Central, right? If you've ever looked at the search term report, we typically find that your customers are going to be searching and finding your products in 3 major ways. And those are, the first is going to be by branded terms, right? So say like you're selling your own branded item, those search terms will typically have your branded name in them. The second one will be the competitor names, and then the third ones are more generic search. So these branded terms are typically really, really low cost. Conversion rate is going to be much higher, and the ACoS is going to be much lower because these are what warmer leads, right? They are looking for your brand specifically, so the likelihood of conversion is going to be higher. Competitor names, on the other hand, are going to be, customer search terms with your competitors' names, right? Pretty intuitive. Mm-hmm. But we notice that these typically have a much higher cost per click and a lower conversion rate and a higher ACoS. And this makes sense to me, at least, because if someone's looking for your competitor, you're taking a more aggressive strategy to show up there. They're not looking for you, right? They're looking for your competitor. So conversion is going to be worse in those circumstances. And then generic search are more like general search terms relating to your items. They're just non-specific to your brand name or your competitors' names. And those tend to be variable, right? Like the cost per click tends to vary, and then conversion rates vary, and so can ACoS.
Yep.
And the reason we bring this up is because clearly, like, these 3 buckets of like keyword trends or audiences perform very differently. And that's where this 3-to-1 campaign structure really comes into play. So if we look through an example on the next slide, this one. Because of these different trends, it's really important to set up your campaigns by audience trend. So you always want to have one automatic campaign running at all times. And let's just walk through this example, right? So say you're selling memory foam pillows. You'll start this automatic campaign. It will house all your memory foam pillows that have the same margin and the same goal. And then once your auto campaign picks up traction and people are searching and clicking on your ads, you'll notice those 3 buckets come up. So you'll create 3 identical manual counterparts for those memory foam pillows.
Yep.
The first one will be, memory foam pillows branded. That one will house all of the keywords relating to your brand name, right? So Takeometrics foam pillows, if we decide that we want to sell foam pillows here, we'll add that keyword.
Just making a slight change in our business model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll add in that keyword to the memory foam pillows branded manual campaign. We then notice that, Tempur-Pedic pillow, people are searching for that and are clicking and are buying. We'll add that to our competitor name campaign. And then the third one, right, people are just typing in memory foam pillow, super generic. We'll add that to our third manual campaign, i.e. memory foam pillows generic. And you want to make sure the naming convention of these is as specific as possible just to make your lives easier, honestly. Like, make sure you name your campaigns memory foam pillows auto for the automatic campaign. Mm-hmm. And then for the manuals, always write like the audience type in the campaign name.
So with campaign names, Alex, when we set up Seller Central campaigns, we recommend that people include objective or goal in the campaign name as well, which I notice is missing from this example. Is that something you would recommend? How detailed do you want to get?
That probably doesn't hurt, right? I mean, it's always good to be as specific as possible. So, I mean, if the goal in general is going to be profitability, then you probably don't need to put the term profitability in every single one of the campaign names. Instead, I would probably just use it as a differentiator. So say you're launching a new memory foam pillow, you could say memory foam pillows auto launch, right? Just to say, like, that these are the launched items. What you could do probably, I mean, if your focus is profitability, and even if it's not, it's probably good to have the margin of the products in that campaign. So for instance, like, say we know after all fees, commissions, returns, damages, whatever the fees associated with Vendor Central is, that our margin of our items, our memory foam pillows, is 40%. That's what we're taking in our pocket. We could always add memory foam pillows auto 40 at the end, just to designate that we know to break even, we need our margins of our products are 40%.
Yeah. So as you need more detail to differentiate your campaigns, as you build more of them, you'll probably want to make the titles or names of the campaigns more detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe has a question. Joe has a couple of questions. I'm going to address one of them right now. Should buyer type or goals be the primary structure of a campaign?
Should buyer type or goal? I think the primary structure of the campaign should be product type.
Yep.
Like product type or product line, and then secondarily it should be goal. At least for like the overall campaign structure.
Yep.
And then if you're looking at the next level, I guess tier 3 would be audience. So it'd be memory foam pillows, launch, and then you would have the 3 manual campaigns per audience type for that.
Yeah, so your automatic campaign would be based on product type, goal, and then based on that automatic campaign, you'll further divide it up into 3 manuals using the search criteria, right? So
exactly.
They would still have the same product line, they would still have the same goal, but they would additionally target a type of search.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly it.
All right, perfect. And then second question from Joe. Why have 3 manual campaigns to 1 auto campaign in Seller Central? So for Seller Central purposes, Joe, I'd recommend just doing mirror, 1 automatic and 1 manual. There are some advanced strategies that you could use incorporating the strategies we're discussing today. But if you are not an advanced user, not an advanced campaign creator, I recommend just doing mirrored, 1 automatic, 1 manual in Seller Central.
Yeah, I mean, in Seller Central, though, I mean, it's the same reasons as we stated above, like we just stated. It's like if you find, which 100% will happen, I think, is like your competitor terms are going to convert at a lower rate than your own brand name. It's probably good, like if you're going to start small, to create a separate campaign with your own branded terms, so you can make sure you can, I guess, adjust your bids and your budgets based off of the return on investment you're seeing.
Yep.
So that's why I would probably say like you would have 3 to 1 in Seller Central, but also at Vendor Central. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's not necessarily harm to having 3 to 1 in Seller Central, but it's not as necessary there as it would be in Vendor Central.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
All right. So now that you have these campaigns set up, you have your 3 to 1. What you want to do is use your automatic campaigns. That would be the 1 in that ratio, and use it as a data mine to find the best search terms that you can then transfer to the appropriate manual campaign based on the type of term that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to look for high converters. High converting is going to vary based on each seller's business. A lot of people look at 2 or more conversions per search term. If you're just getting started, then you might just have to settle for 1 conversion for now and then be more selective as you move along. Right. And then you find the best terms, add them into your manual. We have a screenshot there. If you are one of our customers or trialing us, this is what it would look like in SP Optimizer. You would use the automatic to manual tab and move data from your auto to the appropriate manual campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are the benefits of having this kind of setup, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, and I think Alyssa actually just asked this question, right? She says, with the ability to see data and set bids on the keyword level, why not just create 1 manual with all keyword types and adjust bids individually as needed? And I think the answer to that question is it's better to split it up by audience type, because your audience types are going to convert, like are going to cost different amounts. So if you're concerned with ACoS, you can basically expect that your competitor terms are going to have a higher ACoS than the terms that are related to your brand. So you definitely want to control the bids and the budget by the audience type. So you can spend more or have a higher budget on, your branded names or even on the generic terms than you would on the competitor terms based on the return on investment. So the first benefit is if you're concerned with ACoS, you're able to tie the performance of each manual campaign back to the objectives. And each one of those manual campaigns should have a different objective, right? Like as an advertiser, I'm not thinking, when I'm targeting my competitor names, I want to be profitable, just because historically I know that my competitor names probably won't be super profitable. I should be willing to take a higher ACoS on those terms.
Relating to competitor names, Alex, a question from Dennis here. He said he's tried running campaigns using competitor names as keywords and the ad would not show up. When I asked Amazon, they stated that if I don't have the keyword in my title or product description bullets, then the ad would not show up. Have you encountered this?
Have you? I've not really encountered that.
Yeah, I would say, Dennis, you probably need to just try bidding higher maybe. That might be part of the reason. And then once you bid high and get your ads to place, and you start converting for those terms, then Amazon's going to start seeing you as relevant for that particular search.
Typically what I see is like if you're bidding on a generic keyword, so say we're bidding on memory foam pillow, that's the keyword as, I don't know, a broad match. If you look at the search term report, you'll tend to notice that like if your bids are high or your ACOS is high on that, more broad-based term that you're getting traction on, some of the sales or the customer search relating back to that will have the competitor's name in it. So, I think it's just good to evaluate the keyword and the search term to see which ones Amazon is already showing your ad for as well. But yeah, actually, I think, to Gary's point, perhaps just increase the bid.
Yeah.
That could help a lot.
Yep. And then a question from Jennifer. Should you do a branded campaign if you're a completely new private brand?
Might not be super necessary, right? Because if your brand isn't relevant. But if people are searching for your brand consistently, then I would say yes. So if it's a well-known brand, probably yeah. But if you're newer, it definitely doesn't hurt to do that, to take a defensive approach. And it's going to be super low cost to you, right? I think regardless, typically cost per click is really low.
Yeah, I think as soon as you start to see your own brand name showing up in your search term reports for those automatic campaigns, that's your sign that you should probably start paying money for it, because you want to make sure that you have that real estate and you don't give it up to another competitor.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And then automatic campaign is one where you don't provide keywords. It's just a campaign that Amazon places your ads based on what you have in your description, product title, backend, etc.
Right. It basically lets Amazon do all the heavy lifting to help you find the best keywords to add in for your product. So they'll show your ad based off of all those things Kari mentioned, and then you can use those terms to find what people are actually typing in that causes them to click on your ad and to buy it. So that's really what you should use as a source of keyword data in general.
Exactly. Perfect. And then the last benefit, Alex, on there is measure performance of each ASIN by audience. I think we covered that just now.
And then, the biggest one I think is control budget and bids for each audience type, right?
Yeah.
You want to increase and decrease your bids and your budget by each audience so you can spend more where you see the highest ROI.
Exactly. And that brings us very nicely, it's funny how we arrange this, into our section on bids and budgeting and how you go about establishing a bidding strategy and then spreading your budget as well to the right places. So the first thing you want to do is align your bidding strategy with your goals. What this means is, well, one, your campaign needs to be structured around your goals, and that's why that's important, is because you're going to be adjusting your bids based on those goals. So adjust bids at the campaign level based on objective and performance, or I should say adjust bids at the ad group level or keyword level, but it's going to be one goal per campaign.
Yes.
And then you want to basically go after your break-even ACOS. What your break-even ACOS is essentially your margin. So if your margin is 20%, then you want to target an ACOS of 20%. Is that fair, Alex?
Yeah, I think that's true, right? I think what's important is the second point here is you won't pay the full value of your bid based off of Amazon's bidding. I guess it's another bidding algorithm, but they use a second priced auction. So you bid $1, the next highest is 50 cents, so you'll pay 50 cents.
Yep.
Targeting your break-even ACOS is I think the best, because you're never going to lose money on those sales, and you're most likely going to make the incremental profit you're looking for. Especially when you can afford to pay more, you should certainly be targeting your break-even ACOS.
Exactly.
I think that's a big one.
And then you want to make these adjustments to reduce inefficient spend at the keyword and at the ad group level. So bidding down where you're not getting the performance that you need. And then you want to bid up during your high season as you start to see trends in customer searches, especially if you're selling things like apparel or maybe toys that are especially susceptible to trendy searches. You want to make sure you bid up in those areas. And then you want to learn about your willingness to spend, how much money are you willing to spend on advertising?
Yeah, and Mark actually made a really great point in the question section. So he says, for branded terms that rank organically at the top of the search results, why would you spend money on that? We ran an experiment on those branded terms, and there was actually not any difference in sales. We just saved money on ad spend. We saved over $4,000 a month, no difference in sales. And I think the big point is y'all ran that test. right? Like you guys were able to say, okay, like what happens if we stop bidding on our brand and name? To me, like that's the biggest point there is, yeah, I mean, you were able to figure that out, like learn about your willingness to spend on your brand name, right?
Yeah.
Like you tested it. And now you say, oh, wow, my organic sales weren't impacted because I'm already at the top of the search results. So I think that that was probably like the best case scenario, Mark, is like that you did exactly what I would have done. Of course, you want to get sales organically, not from ads, but a lot of times people do this as more of a defensive maneuver in general.
Yep.
I think like the reason you would learn about your willingness to spend is you want to spend more where you're seeing the highest ROI. And impressions and product page consideration are worth more when the buyer search for your brand. So spending more on those will produce more sales down the road. But to your point, if your overall sales aren't impacted, then I think what you did was right. Like pause, like don't bid on your own brand name anymore. What do you think?
I think that's fair. You needed to spend that money to figure out you don't need to spend that money anymore. But that being said, it's kind of a changing marketplace. So just because it doesn't matter today doesn't mean there's not going to be a new competitor 2 weeks down the road who is bidding on your brand and taking up that real estate.
Yeah, I usually see that happen quite a bit. Like if you stop bidding on your own brand name, then your competitors will certainly start bidding on your brand name, and it will cost them less money to bid on your brand name because you stop bidding so high for it. So, I mean, it's just additional real estate that if you're able to pay for it, then I would recommend it because it will lead to more sales down the road. But, I mean, I think it's good to always test.
Yeah, it's good to experiment with that, run an A/B test. That's part of how you figure out, how much you're willing to spend and where.
Exactly.
And then as far as changing these bids, Alex, how often are you evaluating bids? What's your process like?
Yeah, I would say daily, right? You want to evaluate the performance of a keyword at that bid every single day, and then adjust at least once a day based off of performance over time. Always adjusting over at least 30 days worth of data.
Yeah.
Conversion data, impressions data, sales, spend, etc. What would you say?
I think that sounds right. And I think you made a good point there about looking at 30 days worth of data each day. So just because you're changing it every day doesn't mean you're looking at 1 day's worth of data. You want to keep looking back for a longer time period and make adjustments based on that. If you are using SB Optimizer, which I see some familiar faces, so I know some of your customers of ours, this is what the bid change history would look like. So this is something the software will do for you on a daily basis and is make those adjustments that Alex was describing. And then you could use your ACoS target to basically tell the software how to make those changes. But to make these bid changes, you need to still have an initial bid that you start with. And that's called a default bid. Is it still referred to as a default ad group bid in Vendor Central, Alex?
Yeah, it's still the default bid.
Yeah, perfect. So your default bid is going to be your starting point, and it's really important to make sure you set this correctly because this is going to determine your initial performance until your bids can be changed based on more data. So Alex is going to drop a link into the chat box. This article is basically going to go through a calculation of default ad group bid. I'll briefly walk through it right now. But if you want more details and examples, this article is going to be really helpful. And the 3 pieces of information you need to calculate your default bid is ACoS target, product price, and conversion rate. So ACoS target is that willingness to spend that we discussed earlier. So if you have a margin of 40% and you're willing to spend break even, then your ACoS target would be 40%.
Yeah.
Your product price, so whatever price you sell it at, say $10, and then your conversion rate, say 10%.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you don't have this information, particularly conversion rate, maybe it's a new product or maybe it's the first time you're running ads for it, in that case, you could rely either on organic conversion rate, you could rely on conversion rate for a similar product, or in some cases where maybe it's your first ever product you're selling, you have no point of comparison. Sometimes you just pick, a number that you're comfortable spending based on how much competition there is, and you can always go back and change it as you get more data and get more comfortable.
What do you think about Amazon suggested bid? I kind of like that to start out with if you want people to do this calculation.
Exactly. And sometimes you might not get one right off the bat. So in that case, you would still need to pick some number. And then as Amazon gives you the suggested bids, you can snap back to that.
Yeah, I think it's good to start if you're not using something to automate your bids and you are setting the ad group level default, it's good to see how you're how if you look every single day at the keywords at that bid and see how much traction that they're getting. So say you're not really getting any impressions. So you choose an arbitrary number of 50 cents. You think that's how much you should spend, but you're not sure. just check on the daily number, I think. I know
Yeah.
we don't usually recommend checking daily, but I think it's good to see.
I think for spend purposes, it's
Yeah,
fine because that's
exactly.
pretty well updated. For sales purposes, I wouldn't rely on the daily
Even for
number.
impressions, like if you're not getting enough impressions,
Yeah.
like make sure you're going in there and saying, all right, I like need to increase the default bid
Yeah.
because tons of keywords at this level aren't getting traction.
Exactly. And Channing has the question, doesn't the keyword level bid override the ad group default bid? If I have bids on the keyword level, do I need to care about the ad group level bid? That's a really good question, Channing. So your ad group level bid matters for new keywords because unless you create a keyword at a specific bid, the bid that it's going to rely on is going to be that ad group default bid. And if you're using our software, that's the case as well. So for any new keywords that you create, the first bid that it starts with is that default ad group bid. So you want to make sure this is calculated correctly. And then after that, the keywords bid is going to be independent of the ad group default bid. But the first ever bid that we set for it, how many times can I say bid in a sentence, is going to be that ad group default bid.
Yeah, I think the ad group level bid matters when you're adding in new keywords. So yeah, of course, like the default bid of the keyword overrides the ad group level bid.
Yeah.
But say you want to add in a ton of keywords at once and you always are going to use the default
so if you're
bid, like that's when it matters.
Right. So if you are starting, say, a new automatic campaign, it's starting to really take off and you're getting, say, 10 new recommendations every day that you're adding to whichever relevant manual campaign, all 10 of those are going to get started at whatever the ad group default bid is for that manual campaign. And then from there, they're going to change independently. But that first bid matters. So you want to make sure your ad group default bid is calculated correctly.
Yeah, it's high enough for you to get that initial traction you need, i.e. like the buy-in cost, I would say.
All right.
Lots of good questions.
Lots of really good questions coming in.
Yeah, we still have a few more things to go through. So like I think we'll this
probably
briefly.
Yeah. So budget time.
Yeah. Let's talk about budgets now. Typically, I personally like to see, or typically what I see in general is that people have 30% of their ad spend on their auto campaigns for exploration, and then a 60% or 70% spend on their manual campaigns to double down where you're able to control the bid on those keywords.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is just overall. I typically see people spend about 60% of that budget on their branded keywords.
Yep.
Traditionally, because owning both of those spots, the sponsored ad spot and the organic spot, people always tend to see an increase in lift. And also getting that additional page views in the long run will help increase your overall organic sales.
Mm-hmm.
30% of the spend typically I see on the generic keywords that perform in the middle, and you're able to refine down over time and get more and more specific. And then 10% on competitor name campaigns, which tend to perform poorly, but if you're trying to be super aggressive and target your competitors, which I recommend, definitely want to spend at least a little bit of your manual budget there. And then what I like to do typically is reduce budgets when campaigns are underperforming. So if things aren't working well, reduce that budget and then reallocate it towards the campaigns that are doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide you want to restrict the spend on your branded names, but you just want to spend a little bit, reallocate that towards your generic keyword campaigns, or vice versa, right? Like if you're willing to spend more on your brand and you don't want to bid on competitors anymore. But keep in mind, budgets are purely a way to maintain or decrease the dollars you spend. Your budget, from my experience, and I'm pretty sure according to Amazon as well, doesn't impact the performance of your campaign.
Yeah.
Have you seen the same thing, Gary?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to spend more, say you have a $10 budget today, you're only spending $6, changing that budget from 10 to 20 isn't necessarily going to make you spend more. So the budget is a good way to cut down spend, but not necessarily as a way to increase spend. But even to cut down, I think bidding is a better strategy. So you cut in the right places.
Yeah, I mean, it's always better to have a higher budget if you have like a specific advertising budget.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to let the budget of a campaign restrict your growth. So if you're seeing performance at the ROI or return on investment you're looking for,
mm-hmm.
then there's no reason that you shouldn't be increasing the budgets on those campaigns.
Exactly.
I think it's always better to just like, maybe if you decrease it, at least reallocate it elsewhere. Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Perfect. Yep. So it's a way to just really focus on your dollar amount spent. It doesn't really impact your performance. And then negative keyword strategy is our next section. So negative keywords, similar to Seller Central, are going to be those search terms that you don't want to show up for anymore. So if you have a negative keyword, it means you're no longer going to appear for that search. And we recommend using negative exact. And there are a few scenarios where you want to add negative keywords. So you want to look at your number of impressions. You want to look at your number of clicks. You want to look at the amount spent, and then you want to look at how relevant that search is to you. So if a keyword has been running for, say, 3 days, you probably still want to give it some time before you decide to negate it. But if it's been running for 2 or 3 weeks, then you probably want to add it as a negative keyword, running without giving you any sales, to be more exact. You want to add it as a negative keyword. If it's racked up a lot of clicks, that's also concerning because that's going to start hurting your conversion rate.
Yes.
So you don't want that number to get too high. Sometimes people have a very firm spend amount. Some people are unwilling to spend more than $10 per search term and expiration. You could use that as a benchmark as well if you've had a lot of experience and you know how much you need to spend.
Yeah, typically there I like to go in and see for that campaign in general, how many clicks does it take me on average to get a sale? So say like on average, I know that it takes me 7 or 8 clicks to get a sale, but I have like 25 clicks on this, specific search term that isn't working well. Then I'd be like, all right, like I really don't think it's worth it to bid on this anymore, this specific string of text, so I'm going to negate it.
Exactly.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then relevancy is a confusing one because it requires a little bit of a judgment call. So if you are showing up for searches that are relevant to your product but not converting on them, what this usually indicates is really a sign for you to review your product listing page, because what this is telling you is people are searching for your product, clicking into your ad, but then on the page they're not converting. And I think Alex is going to counter that.
Oh, well, I would just say you can't really do that as a vendor.
Yeah,
right? Because Amazon
true.
controls your listing. So it's like really difficult to say, oh, like I think this is relevant.
That's a great point, yeah.
But for a seller, like that's a big pro of being a seller, not a vendor. So you have full control over the pricing, over the listing. So you can't really sometimes you just have to be willing to take a little bit more spend on those more generic strings of text. That's what we typically see, at least for broader matches. And it's more about like the relevancy, right? Like if the search term is really relevant, but it's racking up spend, maybe intuitively you decide like, all right, I'm willing to spend, memory foam pillows isn't converting well for my memory foam pillows, but I definitely want to show up there. I know it's competitive. And that, again, that's why you have those different campaigns with different goals, right, by audience type. But if it is not relevant at all, so say people type in feather pillows and I have that show up in my search for my memory foam pillows, I know my memory foam pillows don't have feathers in them, so I definitely don't want them to show up there because people searching for feather pillows are clicking and not buying, and that's not relevant to the product in question.
Exactly. So you need to kind of follow what what the customers are doing and typing into that search bar.
And a lot of times what I like to do instead, so say it's in a manual campaign and you want to, when you're considering negating a search term, adding it as a negative exact, I would probably, kind of hesitate to add it as a negative exact. I would instead probably pause the keyword.
It's also an option, yep.
Yeah, so I like to, in manual campaigns specifically, I like to pause keywords. I don't really like to add negatives in manual campaigns because maybe it's just me. I'm worried that it could sometimes restrict spend where typically in the past, like that keyword has worked well. So what I like to do is pause it. And I know if it works really well on the auto, it will go back. I could, add it in again in the future into my manual campaign and kind of jumpstart it as it already has that historical data.
Yep.
But automatic campaigns are definitely more aggressive with adding negative keywords because we have less control.
Exactly. And then if you are using our software, again, this is going to be in that negative keywords tab under keyword actions. You could select the recommendation you want to act on and hit make changes. And then you also have the option of reversing this anytime you decide to change your mind and don't want that negative in there anymore. And this brings us to the next section on keywords, which is refining the match type of your current keywords.
Yeah, but this is pretty straightforward, right? Like the goal is to add keywords from automatic to manual. We typically like to add those in as phrase match. Directly, using your automatic campaign as a broad match and then add it in as a phrase match to the identical manual counterpart in question. And then, once that you put it in as phrase, it continues casting that net and you can refine down farther from phrase to exact. The benefit of this is by adding these longer tail keywords, which might have less search volume, but the conversion rate is much higher. You typically tend to see fewer sellers bidding on more specific terms, which keeps the bids lower and the cost per click lower. The goal for these are just to convert for as many of the more specific searches as possible. So you always want to show up for the longer tail terms that convert well for your products.
Yeah, so it's basically fewer people look for it, but your chances of converting each time they do is going to be higher.
Exactly. Yep.
This is again about real estate here. You want to get as much of that market share as possible by converting for these more narrow search terms.
Exactly.
And then once again, if you're using SP Optimizer, this is going to be under the Targeting Improvements tab where you could find the appropriate, well, I guess it would just be one ad group and make the change here. It's phrase and exact.
Yeah, so keyword is kid raincoat as a phrase match. You find that kid raincoat marmot is converting into sales twice over the last 30 days. You say, okay, great, I want to add that in as an exact match keyword into my children's raincoats competitor manual campaign.
Yep. And before we move on from the keyword section, Alex, Morris has a question about not adding negative keywords to manual campaigns in the broad and the phrase. What if it has nothing to do with your item?
Oh, well, that's a good point. Yeah, Morris, to your point, yes, if it has nothing to do with your item, I'd add it in as a negative exact keyword. So going back to that relevancy point, yeah, that's a very, very solid point.
Yeah, and negative broad is not an option in Seller Central. I don't believe it is in Vendor Central either.
It's not. Right.
So you could add negative phrase, but if you're using negative phrase, you want to be really, really careful.
Yes.
Because you never know what else you might be shutting off. So in the interest of caution, our recommendation is to use negative exact.
Right, exactly. But yeah, if there's no relevancy, add it in as negative exact.
Exactly. Perfect. So this brings us to our next section, which is using sponsored ads data to improve product display and headline ads.
I know, and it's our final section, and this is kind of the fun stuff because we know most of you guys are spending your money primarily on sponsored ads or a combination of them. So it's always good to use data from one type of ad to complement or highlight the advertising performance of other ads.
Yeah, so if you, looks like, around 30% of you were just using sponsored product ads, this is your chance to use that data and branch into more of the HSA and product display as well.
Yeah, so let's start with product display. So if you're running auto campaigns, it's really powerful because you do get that additional real estate on competitors' pages, and you can identify exactly which competitors you're showing up on. So if you ever, so typically, I mean, what you should do is go in there and export your search term report over the last 30, 60 days in AMX or Seller Central and find the competitor ASINs that you're showing up on, right? Those will all start with B00. They'll only show up if you are running an automatic campaign. And you want to find the ones that over time you've converted into a sale for. So you know you're already doing well on that item. You should capitalize on that and make sure you run a product display ad targeting that ASIN specifically with the product that is converting for it. So we know that our children's raincoats and our automatic raincoat campaign, children's raincoats, we know some of those are converting into sales. On the second ASIN in question that's highlighted in green, we would run a product display ad with one or two of those ASINs in that campaign and target that product specifically. It's just additional real estate that works for you. Can't hurt. And then the second one is going to be for headline search ads. So I like to run headline search ads complementary to sponsored ads. So when you're refining your target match type and your sponsored ads, what you should be doing is creating a headline ad that houses those similar products together that you can add those keywords to. So you have a children's raincoats manual campaign and an auto campaign, and then you also have a children's raincoats headline search ad. So keywords that work well in your sponsor ads, add them to the headline search ad as well. You could also create headline search ads that target competitor name keywords that convert well for your sponsored ads. So more of an aggressive approach. Again, you don't want to put your competitor name in the headline. You want the keywords to be your competitors' names in there.
That's a good distinction to make.
Yeah, exactly. So your headline could say something like, I don't know, like children's raincoats by Tegometrics or something like that, and then you could bid on all of your competitor names in there. And again, the third one I like to do is additional strategy to target my own brand name as a defensive strategy or as an opportunity to cross-sell ASINs. So say I sell raincoats and rain boots and rain hats, and I group them all together, and I can create a headline campaign with all of those ASINs that target my own brand name or even more generic keywords. So that's just a way to use your sponsored ads data, use the search data from those campaigns, and add them into your headline ad campaigns because they're going to be more expensive. So you only want to add things that work.
So we have a couple of questions. around headline search ads. So Dennis wants to know, do you have to have 3 products to run a headline ad?
Yes.
Well, quick answer there. So
Yes,
Dennis,
you
if you
do.
just launch and you have 1 product, you might need to wait a little while until your product catalog expands.
What I typically see people, so most people at least have 2 products. What I usually see is that they'll create a third one that bundles the 2 items together
Gotcha.
to create a third one to run a headline ad.
So take notes, Dennis. So if your product is something that you can bundle, once you add your next product on, that's an option for you as well.
Yep.
And then to follow off that from Stan, how many items should be in a headline search ad in order to increase conversion?
Yeah, I like to see at least 5. I say that because I'll say 6, because you want to make sure that there's always enough items to cover the 3 products that are shown. If one of the items, so if you only have 3 items and one of those products goes out of stock, then your ad will be shut off. So you always want to have enough products in the headline ads to cover a full set of items.
Can you say that one more time, Alex? That was really valuable.
No, I know. It's probably
the thing about out of stock?
Yeah, so in a headline ad, you need at least 3 items to run a headline ad.
Yep.
If one of those items goes out of stock, your ad will get shut off. So you always want to have more than 3 items in your headline ad. So even if one of them goes out of stock, another one can essentially come in and replace that item.
Got it.
So that's why I like to have 3 to 6 similar products that you can run in a headline ad.
Perfect. So 3 minimum, but it's better to have more in case you do have stock out issues. And you want to offer up, some additional options for your customer if they click into your headline ads.
Yeah, what's really cool about headline ads is that they can be sent directly to your Amazon store as well. So sometimes you can send them to your Amazon store, or you can decide to send them to a product detail page. Yep. So you can really group any types of products together and send them to your Amazon store, which should be a representation of your brand.
So my own follow-up question to that, if I were running headline search ads, which now that we have all of these new things we're launching, pillows and raincoats, would I want to focus on my best converting in my display ad and then have the rest on the product page? Or which one do I want to lead with?
I think I would always want to have products in my headline ads that have at least 4 stars, 4 or 4.5 stars.
Okay.
If I don't, then my products don't look like they're good quality, and you can see the number of reviews in the headline ad.
Got it.
So I would probably bestsellers, hoping that they are at least 4 stars.
Yep.
What I also would consider, now that I'm brainstorming out loud, is you could have 2 bestsellers and then a new product in there to kind of mask the lack of reviews.
Okay,
so you're trying to launch a new product, you could do that.
Yeah, so you basically pick your leading product and then you use that to divert to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like what grocery stores do, right? They put your milk in the very back, so you have to go through all of the other stuff that you don't normally buy to get your milk.
Oh, wow, that is smart, right?
So it's kind of a version of that is you lead with what you know people want and then kind of take them through the ones that they maybe aren't as familiar with.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect analogy. I actually never knew that about grocery stores.
Yeah.
That's true though.
Fact. Perfect. So we have a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So I just want to go through a couple more slides, guys, and then we'll get back to answering questions. So definitely stick with us. Alex and I are going to stay for as long as you guys have questions, get them answered for you. Perfect. So this brings me actually into our last poll question of the day, which is how are you currently managing sponsored products? Just for our information, there's some ways that work better for some people. It just kind of depends on where you are, what your level of maturity is with your business. So just launch this poll. I'm going to guess most people are going to be doing it themselves in either Seller Central or Vendor Central. But there are options, for having an outside agency manage it, software. Or maybe you've just set it up and you haven't really done much management yet and you're just getting started. So hopefully some of these strategies we shared today help you along that path.
We try to make these webinars like as collective as possible. So it's difficult. Like we don't want to just give specific ACOS examples and stuff like that. We just want to make it as broad reaching to everyone on the webinar as possible. So if you have questions about your specific business, please reach out to us. Like we'll have someone on our team call you afterwards. And we can help you more specifically with your own business needs. So, I mean, that's just a caveat. Yeah.
So we'll answer, as much of your questions as possible today, but sometimes if it gets really specific, we need a lot more business information, things like that. Perfect. So most of you have voted. I'm going to close out this poll. It looks like, hey, I was right again. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow, sorry.
Our team manages it directly in Seller Central. Just kidding, guys. and that's not uncommon. And then we do have some software users as well. So it's important, if you want to try to scale your business, that you get those tools that you need to grow in the right direction.
Right.
All right, guys, 2 more slides, and then it's question time, I promise. So we wanted to introduce all of you to a new product called Takeometrics Flywheel. Alex is dropping a link to that in the chat box, and we invite you to sign up for the launch list. This is a product that we're all really excited about here that we're hoping to launch by the end of this quarter. And we want you to get as much information about it as possible. So sign up for the launch list so you can learn more about what Takeometrics Flywheel is. We also, if you're not already a user or already on a trial, invite you to sign up for a 30-day free trial of Takeometrics SP Optimizer. Those were the screenshots we've kind of peppered throughout the presentation today. It looks like some of you are already using software. If you're not using our software, this is your chance to try it out. So Alex has dropped that link as well to sign up for a free trial, and someone from our team will reach out to you, I would say, by end of day today or tomorrow. Definitely in the next couple of days, and give you more information and start that conversation. We're all big talkers here. We love chatting. So definitely sign up and we'll reach out to you and get you set up correctly. Just to kind of summarize what we went through today, and while we're going through this summary slide, what I'd recommend is going ahead and starting to post your questions. So when we get to the Q&A section next, we'll just start going through them one by one.
Yep, so first, remember Vendor Central offers those 3 types of ads for y'all to use: sponsored products, headline search ads, and product display ads, and we think you should use all 3. It's always better to diversify, like investing. Then when you start building your campaigns for sponsored ads specifically, you want to use a 3-to-1 audience-based campaign strategy, where you have 1 auto campaign and 3 manual campaigns for your branded terms, for your competitor terms, and your generic terms, which leads right into bullet point number 3. Each one of these audience types should have different goals and objectives and performance expectations, quite honestly.
Yep.
And based off of those 3 manual campaigns and 1 auto campaign, you want to align your bidding strategy and budgets with the goals of those campaigns, and then shift spend based on performance. To reduce waste ad spend, y'all should be adding in negative exact keywords or pausing keywords, and then adding in new keywords using that explore and exploit strategy, and refining the targeting match types of your current keywords by broad, phrase, and exact to double down on the performance. And then you should always be using your sponsored ads data to improve the performance of your other ad types in AMS, which is something that we can help you with as well.
Perfect. So great summary, Alex. We have some great questions that we can address now that we haven't gotten to yet, but keep them coming as we go through here. Like I said, Alex and I will stick around for as long as you guys have questions. So this is just a point of clarification. Dennis has a question around, does Amazon offer to manage advertising for sellers? That was one of our options in the last poll. This is just something that some sellers have tried out before, Dennis, which is a pilot program, usually to help you first get started with advertising.
Yeah, the answer is like kind of. They kind of do. They'll give you like a bid to adjust like maybe once a month, but it's nothing like I'm sure you're doing now, which is going in every day, adjusting bids. Yeah. It's not nearly as much as you should be doing. But yeah, it's typically just a pilot program for like 8 weeks that they offer to sellers of a certain size or volume of sales.
Exactly.
I know for AMS, if you're of a certain size or if you're a vendor, you will get assigned a representative to help you manage your campaigns. Okay. But it's very similar to what I just said, right? Like, although you have someone technically running your ads on AMS, all they'll do is send you like a bulk sheet to upload and change your bids. It's not like someone's actually managing them, like a full-time employee.
Gotcha. Stan has a question. What's the difference between Seller Central ads and AMS ads in terms of conversion?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. I don't really see a huge difference in terms of conversion. Gary, we were talking about this earlier today, actually.
Yeah.
Where we were saying, vendors historically have said, running headlines in Vendor Central typically converts better than Seller Central.
Yep.
I think you should stick with where you have the most historical data. What matters in terms of Amazon algorithms is the length of time your campaign is running, regardless of whether it's in AMS or if it's in Seller Central. The longer it's been running, the better it's going to convert typically. So I would say like the length of time matters more than the interface. I don't know. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to retain as much historic data as you're running your campaigns or restructuring. So I think that is important, which doesn't mean you should never start new ads or new forms of ads, but your historic data will serve you well if you have it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Perfect. And then question from Lester. Let's see.
Lots of good questions. We're just scrolling.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading the questions, guys. Let me actually come back to Lester's question. It's a longer one, so I'm going to take a little second to read it. So,
is there a way to get display ads in Seller Central? No, unfortunately, there is not. Seller Central only has headline ads and sponsored ads. There's an additional interface called AAP, which is Amazon's display advertising network. And that's run through AMG or Amazon Marketing Group. So it's not front facing, like you as a seller would not be able to manage it. Someone from Amazon would manage it for you, and there's a pretty high buy-in cost for that type of display advertising across all of the Amazon channels. So basically, it's like following people around the internet with your advertisements. So say they didn't buy your product, they viewed your product and didn't buy it. Yeah, it's called AAP, and you want to do research on that, and it's run through Amazon's marketing group or AMG.
Perfect. So going back to Lester's question. So his question is if he has a product that has really strong organic sales, but despite that, he is not placing on, say, page 1 of results with his sponsored product ads. Should he still consider running those ads, or should he stop them?
I think you have to run them, right? Like being on page 1 isn't always the best for your ads. Say you're on page 1 and like people are clicking and aren't buying. That's actually going to hurt your organic results of that product. So I think you want to run ads, but your target or your ACoS target should be, up to your product margin. So that will get you placed on probably a bunch of different places, right? It could get you placed on page 2 at the top. It could get you placed on competitor pages. But at least you can afford those sales.
Exactly.
I would rather pay for sales I can afford than try to get on page 1 and not convert if my goal is profitability. But if my goal is like a product launch and like all I want to do is rank for a specific keyword, then like I think you should just bid higher and try to get on page 1 if you don't care about being able to afford the sales, or if you're willing to take a loss on those sales, which are both valid strategies. It just depends on the stage of the product life cycle you're in for the products you're advertising, right?
Yeah, and if you have the option, if you are in Vendor Central, Lester, then consider some of those other ad types. So maybe a product display ad is the way to go to steal some of that sales velocity from your competitor.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good call.
Question from Catherine. When you're only selling on Seller Central and using sponsored products, is there a way to capitalize on the ASINs that come in through the search term report, since as a non-vendor, you can't run display ads?
Yeah, not really. The way I would capitalize on that is basically just to see where you're showing up. See if like those competitors have any keywords that you might be missing in their title bullet points. It's more of a way of like secret competitive intel, I would say, but currently there is no way to target ASINs in Seller Central. Maybe that will change in the future. I'm not sure. But now I think it would just be a way to find out like who are your biggest competitors and who does Amazon think is most relevant to your products. From your experience, Gary, is that the same?
Yeah, it's really for competitor intelligence purposes, not necessarily for targeting them, but it's good to know, who else is out there that may be getting on your turf that you want them to back off.
Yeah. Like you could figure out who your competitors are that you're doing really well against, and then figure out their name and then bid on that name.
Yeah.
In the competitor campaign, I would say, but like you don't know that that's converted well for you in the past, like that brand name keyword specifically.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to spend a little bit of extra on exploration, I think that that's a valid strategy.
Yep, exactly.
So figure out the ASINs and then their competitor names and build a campaign specifically for that.
Yeah, and if you find that maybe they're stealing sales from you, you can look at what they do at their product listing page or how they have their product position and steal some of their ideas and see if that works for you.
Yeah, good.
Question from Dennis. So Dennis says, I use Seller Central now and Amazon is asking me to join Vendor Central. What are the real benefits of having Amazon sell my products via Vendor Central? What kind of revenue growth could I see? Can I do both?
Yeah, you can do both. I think the benefit is that your product now says shipped and sold by Amazon, right? So you wholesale to Amazon and you get paid with an invoice over X number of days. And the non-benefit is that you don't have control over your product page or your price or anything like that. But the pros are that Amazon's noticing you and they think that your products are good enough for them to sell, and you could get that fancy label. I think that could certainly help the sales rank of the item. But then you're pretty much dependent on Amazon to submit a purchase order to you on a weekly or monthly basis and order more product, right? So say Amazon sends a PO to you in Vendor Central that only has like 6 units this week. There's really nothing you can do about it, right? So I mean, that's like the pros and cons is you can probably increase the sales velocity just by getting that shipped and sold by Amazon status, but you have limited control. Not everything is in one interface. So what most sellers do, or some sellers that I guess on this webinar, is they sell on 3P and 1P. So when vendor runs out of your item, you could also have that product listed as a seller and get the sales that way.
Yep.
Which I think is probably the smartest decision. Is if like you should just test it with a few items, let Amazon sell it, and then once they run out of stock, you could still be stocked in FBA as a seller.
Yep, makes sense. Jung Ho has a question. So do I put competitor name on our keywords? So Jung, you do want to do that. So you want to have a competitor campaign. So you don't want to put your competitor keywords into, say, a generic campaign or generic manual campaign. So you want to make sure. And there's someone who asked about this earlier in the webinar. I apologize, I don't remember the name, but they were asking, even if they're just getting started, should they still have those 3 separate campaigns? I would say yes.
Yeah.
And then you would want to put those competitor keywords into the competitor campaign. So you don't have to have this campaign, but if you start to see it pop up in your automatic campaign as a search term, then yes, you should.
And just going back to our last question, sorry, Gary. Mark wrote in about like vendor or seller. He goes, don't do it. Like no control over brand or price. Expect your pricing to plummet. Which I've seen quite a bit is if you wholesale to Amazon, your price will definitely, Amazon will drop the price. 100%. So I mean, that's another risk of wholesaling to Amazon. But yeah, also agreed with what you just said.
Yes. So Pavesh has a question. I'm spending a large amount, but I don't get the results, and I'm increasing my bids day by day. So I guess more of a statement than a question, but it's not uncommon to see that, and it's just going to be dependent on competitiveness in your category. Sometimes you have to be willing to bid a lot higher. That's where your willingness to spend comes in. And if you're not willing to do that, then you need to reevaluate strategy.
And maybe he's spending too much. Like maybe he could actually make more money if his bid was a little bit lower.
Maybe so.
Yeah, I see that happen sometimes. Like people think that just by increasing the bid so much, they'll end up making more money.
Yeah.
But typically, I find that there's a sweet spot of a bid over time that people will eventually fall into. So you always want to make sure, like if you're spending too much, make sure you go in and check for negative keywords. Like perhaps your customer search terms are not super relevant. Like you could have a lot of irrelevant search mapping back to those keywords you're bidding on. So go check that. Maybe decrease the bids on some of the keywords that have an ACoS that's too high, or if you think you're spending too much on them.
That's actually a really good point, because what you could be doing is dropping conversion by not adding those negative keywords and spending where you're not supposed to. So that's something important to look at, because increasing your conversion rate will increase your performance and you'll get more for your money.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So
that's a really good question,
really
guys.
Good question.
Like if you have any more, please reach out to our team.
Let's see. So we'll do last question. So last question here is there's one around, should you stop running your automatic campaign if you've harvested say 95% of your keywords?
Oh, that's a good one. I always keep an evergreen automatic campaign running, like AKA it should just always be on. That way you're able to capitalize on seasonal trends, number one, or even just like typical trends that appear like it doesn't even have to just be seasonal. It could just be trends that come up in search. And then 2 is you get that additional marketplace on your competitors' listings, and you can figure out whose competitors' listings that you're sitting So those are the two major benefits. Search is Amazon's basically a search engine, right? Like people go there, they type stuff in, they click on something, and then they buy it. That's always going to be changing based off of like the mix of people that are typing in that week. So there's never a reason to not run an auto campaign. If anything, you should just have 30% of your budget allocated there, and then double down on the budget for your manual campaigns, and capitalize on your current keywords, which you probably already know work well.
Perfect. So I'd like to invite all of you to our next webinar, which is going to be on September 12th. And this is going to be, again, focused on 3P or sponsored products in Seller Central around growing sustainable profit on Amazon. So we invite you to join. I know most of you are 3P Seller Central users, so definitely sign up for that. And we look forward to speaking with you then. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team so we can continue to answer those for you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a great day.